For those that have already joined us, it's my pleasure to introduce Carrie Dostal, our Program Quality Director, who is tonight's presenter, and she's going to talk to us about making good decisions. Carrie.
Thanks, Betty. Yes, when we were talking about what we wanted to talk about for all of these hot topics, we decided 2 or 3 months into the new year, we need to give everybody a little push to start thinking about goals, make sure we're working on our goals. But as I started thinking about this, I knew most of the people that log into these, most of the people that watch these recordings are very likely club officers, district officers, or have been in the past. So we already are very well aware of the Distinguished Club Program. We've already figured out, we know what it takes to be distinguished. So then you might be saying, okay, Carrie, so you're probably going to tell us you need to work on your club success plan and your area and your division and your district success plan. Well, yes, that would be a great idea. But we're not going to work on that tonight because, again, I think that we all know how to put those together. They're very self-sufficient and they're a great tool. Just like the Distinguished Club Program is a great measurement for our clubs. Are they successful? Are we doing what we need to be doing? If we are, we should be getting those goals. So then I took another step back and I thought, if we're talking about goals, people are probably going to think, okay, we need to talk about SMART goals, making our own goals. And again, I think most of you have been through a training session or 2 or 10 on how to make SMART goals. And we all know those things. But sometimes we just don't do it. So over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to give this presentation, and I've done it as a speech for my club. It's a tiny little thing, and I've done it as hour-long workshops for 4 or 5 different groups. So this is going to be kind of an in-between. It's going to be quick hitting, but in order for it to be helpful for you, what I want you to do is to think about what is currently sitting on your to-do list that is not moving off of that to-do list. And that could be at work, that could be at home, that could be for Toastmasters, or it could even be something that is in the back of your head that you haven't even yet put on paper for your to-do list. So this could be anything from, I need to clean out this closet. I need to lose 10 pounds. I've always wanted to write a book. My boss gave me X project and I just don't know how to get started, or I just don't feel like doing it, or whatever the reason is. Think of 2 or 3 of those things that are on your list, and as we go along, I want you to determine where you are with those projects. And I think that will help this be a little more helpful for you. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. And feel free to make this big or small. You can adjust your own screen on Zoom so that you can read this, hopefully. So my title tonight is The 3 Ds of Getting Things Done. So the 3 Ds that I've come up with are deliberate, decide, and deliver. And typically, one would think deliberate means to give consideration to think about it. That should probably come first. Then you make a decision, decide if you really want to do it or how you want to do it. and then you actually do it. You check it off your list. But as you can see from these arrows, depending on the size of the project, sometimes you have to circle back around. So these don't always come in numerical order like this, but that's the way I'm going to present it today. So just keep in mind it won't necessarily follow this order. So the first D is deliberate. And for deliberation, what deliberation means, as I said earlier, is to give careful consideration. So on each of these 3 Ds, there are kind of 2 different ditches you can fall into. You can first fall into the ditch of getting stuck in this step. And getting stuck in the step of deliberation means that you are spending too much time thinking about it. And a lot of us probably fall into that category because thinking about something, there is no end point. You could think about something forever. For the rest of your life, you could think about something, whether it's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. You could research something. You could become the utmost expert on this thing that you're deliberating about. So in which case you're stuck because you're never really done deliberating, because there's always more to consider. However, what you need to do to get unstuck is to think about 3 things. The size of your project. If you're buying a car or buying a bottle of shampoo, that's a big difference between how much you should really deliberate. Buying a bottle of shampoo, you might look at the price in the grocery store, or maybe you go off of a recommendation from a friend. You might spend a tiny amount of time deliberating about that. But I hope you spend more time if you're buying a car, because that's a bigger purchase. Same thing with complexity. If it's the more complex something is, the longer you need to think about it, clearly. And history means your own history with this. If I'm thinking about building a deck on the back of my house, I'm going to have to deliberate a lot because I have no building skills whatsoever, nor does my husband or anybody in our household. So I'm going to have to think about that a lot more. The other thing that causes us to get stuck is the internet. I don't know how many of you have been down the rabbit hole of Pinterest or YouTube, but it can be a rabbit hole. Last year, we had some water damage to our house, which I know a lot of people had this year because of the derecho. And we had to make some decisions and hire someone, and it wasn't up our alley. And our contractor said, well, go out to Pinterest and find a picture or an example of what you want this new wall with the new fireplace and all this to look like. My goodness, there are lots and lots of pictures out there to look at. And none of them were exactly what I wanted. So I kept looking at pictures. And then the next day I would look at more pictures, and I would look at the same pictures again, and I'd pin them. And then I'd go and look at more pictures. So at some point you just have to say, I'm done. You have to make it done. So give yourself a time limit. So the other ditch on deliberate is that you could totally skip it. You could not think about it and just go straight to decisions. Going straight to decisions, one example of that is your New Year's resolutions. One of the reasons that New Year's resolutions do not work is because people say, I am going to do this, but they haven't really thought it through. They haven't really planned it out. They don't know what it's going to take. So that's one example of where you wouldn't want to do it. The other example is maybe you go straight to the deliver step. Maybe you take Nike's approach and say, just do it. Now, if it's something that you've done over and over again, if it's something you already know how to do, yes, just do it is great advice. You don't need to think about it if it's something that you already know how to do. However, if it's something new to you, let's take some careful consideration, because I'm sure everybody has an example of when they have acted without thinking. And one example I like to share is when my first apartment in college, we never had a dishwasher at our home. My parents never had one before I went to college. And I was not aware that there was a difference between dishwashing soap detergent and the kind of dish soap that you wash dishes in. So I had a Brady Bunch moment in our kitchen with the soap suds billowing out of the dishwasher, filling up our tiny little kitchen. And it was pretty funny. But it was one of those things where I thought, oh, this is probably a reasonable alternative. Since I don't have any dishwasher detergent, I can just use dish soap. No, doesn't work. Yeah, you can imagine. It was that funny. So the second step, we're going to go on to decide. So you might think, okay, well, decide is pretty easy. Yeah, yes, you do it. No, you don't do it. Well, within decide, I'm also including the fact that if you're saying you're going to do it, or how you're going to do it, you need to make sure you have the resources. We couldn't have gotten our new fireplace last year if we didn't have the money to buy the fireplace. One of our options was just to take out the fireplace and put up a wall. That would have been cheaper. So we had to make those determinations, whether we had the resources, which resources could be your own time or money. And if you're going to make a decision that you're going to do something, you need to look at it and decide, what is the priority of doing this? And what is my commitment level? Because sometimes the decision has to be no, because your plate is full of other priorities. And sometimes the decision has to be maybe, but not now, because I don't have time for this in the near future. So usually when we get stuck in decision making, it's because of self-doubt. We're just not sure. We just can't bring ourselves to choose between what might seem to us as equally good or maybe equally bad decisions. Now, hopefully, if you're choosing between a couple options and one is clearly better than the other, everybody can make those decisions. But that usually doesn't happen in real life. I've put on here a book that I read many, many years ago, but it really had an impact on me, because at the time I was working for a boss who had trouble making decisions. She would always, no matter what I asked her, she would always say, well, let's get some more information about that. Let's dig into that a little farther. There was never a time when she would say, okay, that sounds good, let's do it. So Blink by Malcolm Gladwell is the power of thinking without thinking. And he really focuses in on assuming it is in your wheelhouse and you are the expert and you know what you're doing, you should trust your instincts. Doctors do this. experts in all sorts of fields can make very quick decisions that are very, very good. And if they take longer to make decisions, those decisions aren't necessarily better than the quick decisions that they made with very little information and very little input. So what happens on the other side of the decide, in the other ditch, which is not deciding or second guessing? And some of us think, oh, I don't want to decide because I want to keep my options open. Maybe option 2 will end up better than option 1. Well, yes, that's true, but at some point, you have to make the decision or you're going to lose the opportunity, because opportunity doesn't stick around forever. I'm throwing out another author here, Andy Andrews, and the book that this quote is from, Andy says, successful people make decisions quickly and change their mind slowly. The book that this comes from is The Traveler's Gift, which, if you've been with me in meetings before, you'll see behind me I have my bookshelf. Grab this off my bookshelf today. Andy has probably 10 to 15 books. I have 7 or 8 of them behind me. If you Blink is a very cerebral book. It has a lot of research. It has a lot of good stories, but it's kind of like you're taking a class when you're reading that book. Andy Andrews is like you're reading a fiction novel, but he's teaching you lessons. So if you like that kind of book, I would definitely recommend Andy Andrews. And keep in mind, you can make quick decisions, and they can be good decisions. So the last step is deliver. And the deliver is, where you get stuck in deliver is, 1, perfectionism. I have a friend at work whose mantra is, done is better than perfect. And this applies to speeches, this applies to writing and certain activities where you can continually edit and continually tweak a product or artwork, for example. Sometimes good enough is good enough. You don't always have to have the perfect deliverable, if you will. The other way you can get stuck is if your project is just too big, or maybe you haven't adequately defined it. Maybe your goals are not SMART goals. Maybe you've said, oh, I just need to get healthy. Well, if that's what's on your to-do list, you're never going to be able to check that off. There's no time you can say, yep, I'm healthy, I'm done being healthy. But you can say, this week, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times. That you can check off your list. So make sure that you've put interim steps on any of these actions that you take. So on the last side of this is the skipping or scrimping on the delivery. And Yoda from Star Wars has a famous quote, do or do not, there is no try. And to be honest with you, when this movie came out many, many years ago, I didn't like this quote, because we grow up saying, if at first you don't succeed, try again. What's wrong with trying? Trying is what we're supposed to do, right? Well, over the years, I've come to appreciate this quote because I have learned that trying or allowing yourself to say, I'm going to try this, there's certain circumstances where that is great. If you're going to try a new hobby or try a new activity. But if you really want to check something off your list, trying is kind of a lack of commitment. It's giving yourself permission to fail. Consider the person who says, I'm going to try to give up smoking, versus the person who says, I'm going to give up smoking. The person who doesn't put that try in there is significantly more likely to succeed. They might not succeed on the first try, but they're going to keep going because they're going to do it. The person who said, I'm going to try, they can try. Well, it didn't work. Check it off my list. I tried. And last but not least, procrastination. Now, if you're a procrastinator because you work good under pressure and you wait until the last minute and you always get everything done on time, but it's just you wait until the end. You know what? That's okay. Maybe that's how you work. But if you're the kind of procrastinator who never gets the thing done, maybe you have a beautiful day, the stars are aligned, it's the perfect day to work on your project, and you still find a way to do something else. Then maybe you need to figure out why you're procrastinating. Maybe it's fear of failure. Maybe it's because you really don't know what that next step is. But the way to get over procrastination is to take the next step. So I've gone over my time. I wanted to leave more time to chat about this, but what I want everybody to do, if we've got a few people on the list, if you're willing to share, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you're willing to share, tell me about something that you're stuck on or that you have been stuck on. Did any of these things resonate with you?
I can tell you I get caught in the research, doing the background stuff, because I get fascinated by something and I start delving deeper into it when I may not need to do that to get the final project done. Although I will admit that sometimes that getting stuck on something and delving into it provided me with something I can do again later. So it wasn't always negative. You know, it may have taken more time up at that point than I really needed to spend, but it was kind of stuck back in here or written on a notepad or whatever the case may be, and I could use it at another time. I'm a firm believer, don't reinvent the wheel. If you have something or you have an inspiration, or whether it's a speech, whether it's something you need to do at home, whatever, that use everything that you can possibly use. Don't waste it. You know, reuse it. Give it to somebody else to use, but do not let it go by the wayside when it's got a value.
Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate that comment. Mary, you're off mute. Are you wanting to share something?
I'm contemplating it. Usually every year I'm part of 3 people that work as a team to plan a family reunion. And it would have been last Saturday if we had held it this year. And 2 of the 3 of us decided not to hold it. I didn't talk to the third person. I just figured, well, if you never heard from us, you figured we weren't going to have it. And I've felt really bad about that ever since. And none of us that I know of ever publicized to the group as a whole, like on Facebook, where we normally put the invitation, that we weren't doing it. We just didn't. And I feel like even now they should put something out there, say, hey, you know, we didn't do this. And I think,
stay tuned for next year, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what I want to do. And I feel like it's procrastination because it was a sort of a fear of failure that there may be people that, or it's more of a fear of causing controversy, because some people may have said, oh, we should have done another way anyway, and other people might be saying, you didn't have the right to make the decision without us. And it's just like, I didn't know how to handle it, so I just didn't do anything. And that's not the right answer.
Right. And maybe sometimes you feel like you're not the right one to make the decision, and yet you have to. Or sometimes, your boss says, I've made the decision. This is what you're going to do. But even if the decision is handed to you, you still have to commit to it. You still have to prioritize it. You still have to make the decision yourself that I'm doing this. Even though technically you have to, if you don't kind of internalize that decision, sometimes that can be the problem why something isn't getting off your list, because you never really wanted to do it in the first place.
Exactly.
All right, anybody else have some comments?
Well, let me make some comments. It's interesting to listen to the presentation that you just made, because I realize that there are different approaches that people take to these things. So my approach is similar but different in a number of steps that you have made. But it's just interesting to hear another perspective and to see how, I would say, Americans do stuff. Because, I'm not really American, Jamaican. Yeah, and there's a question about procrastination and in terms of doing something, to do or not to do. One of those things, I think it's Yoda's quote, where some people, they need to build their self-esteem in something. So they want to do well, at least until they're known to be able to do well what they do. They don't want to just like do something and then people look and say, wow, that person always does something that's just substandard. What about that?
Well, I mean, I think, if you go back to Toastmasters, the trying and trying things out is part of what Toastmasters is all about, because you get a safe place to try things. So yes, I definitely don't want to say expunge the word try from your vocabulary. And it's fine if you're trying, if you realize that's what I'm doing. I'm going to dip my toe in this and see how it is. But if you're, depending on what your goal is, trying might let you, like if you want to be the world champion of public speaking, are you just going to try to give some speeches? You're going to probably have to go a little bit beyond that.
Yeah. I agree. I entirely agree with that part of it in terms of
So Orville, I'm curious, what would, are you the typical Jamaica person, or is that you just don't make goals? Is that the thing? You just are relaxed all the time? What does that mean to you, to me?
It means that I get a lot of stuff done, that I meet my goals. I'm like an overachiever, generally speaking. And in terms of the system of identifying your options, scoring those options, so that you can look at the top 3 options, choosing the best options, implementing, and then looking at the feedback and doing that circuitous thing to improve over time. That's my approach. So I don't think I get stuck in terms of being at that first stage and not knowing what to do. But there is when I have some things to do that I'm not sure how to go about them, when I get to a comfortable place mentally about the thing, I know that this is what I'm to do, and it comes to me eventually that this is how it's to be done. This is the best way, and I'm able to just move forward at that time. But the whole thing of incubation, where you think about something for a time, and then you let it go, and you go on a walk, exercise, go to sleep, whatever. You get up, And there's the answer. You write it down. I write down stuff a lot. So like when you're talking a while ago, I was writing down some of the things that I need to do. And just having them in front of me brings them to a manageable level. Because now I know it's 5 things and it's not just, I wonder how many there are.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks, Orville. Well, it's past 8:30 and we're supposed to be only a half hour here. So I do want to wrap up and thank you all for coming. But I'm willing to hang around if anybody needs to chat more. Betty, thanks for being here. Did you have any closing comments?
Yes, I do. Excuse me. Next month for October, Matthew Kanar and Cindy Irwin, who are planning our huddle for us, will be hosting, and you will be getting some exciting information and a lot more details about the huddle than we've already been ready to release. So on your calendars, we're back to the first Monday of the month now, and we will be here same time, same place, and we'll have Cindy and Matthew tempting us to register for the huddle. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
A question, I think Betty or somebody might be able to answer this. I've not heard much about the dates for the contest, division, and so on. Last year we did a lot of, we had a lot more focus on that in terms of getting those dates sorted out. At what point does it happen this time around?
Pretty soon. Yeah, pretty soon. We have the date for what we hope to be our speech contest, division speech contest, and spring conference is April 30th and May 1st. Since the contest has to be online and the conference could be in person, but if it's in person, it needs to have an online component. We yet don't know what that's going to look like, but it will. One option that I've heard from another district is they were going to have their contest at a separate time and have a conference that didn't include the contest. The contest is one of the main fun things of the conference, so I don't necessarily like that, but that's an option. So since that's the end of April, I would imagine division contests will be early April, area will be March, backing up to, club contests really should get started by the 1st of March in order to make sure we're giving everybody at least 2 weeks in between each step to be fair to the contestants.
And Carrie, if I'm remembering correctly, our January deck meeting is going to focus on speech contest, right?
Right.
So that's where we'll be getting into a lot more detail. I don't know if that's helpful or not, Orville, and then between now and that meeting, there'll be a lot of discussing and planning and hashing around about how District 19 is going to do all of this.
But I mean, we can still get them on the calendar. We can do a lot of things before January.
Right. We need to get those dates out.
All right, if there's no more comments, I'll let you all get back to your evening. Thanks for signing on. Matthew, I believe, was recording, so if you know of someone that might need to listen to this, let them know that it'll be available.
Great job, Carrie.
Okay, thank you.